Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. Very interesting case where we had this dude, his name is Nate. He's actually a friend of Bull's. His wife, Ava, went missing, but it took like 3 days before, Nate had said anything, called the cops. And the only reason why that even sparked anything for him was because Chris, Ava's driver, came to pick her up and is like, wait, she's not here? Wait, you haven't been in contact with your wife? Like, it took him like 6 hours upon like showing up there, finding out like, oh, she wasn't at the lake house or whatever, and he didn't call. Like, it does not look good for him in that regard, because it's just kind of like, the fact is that you waited so long looks very suspicious, and it doesn't look out. But for him, it's like his justification is like, she's an artist. The fact of the matter is, I wanted to kind of give her space, because didn't want to be a little too clingy in that regard, because it's like she's kind of a free spirit. It's like the whole analogy of like, he's a dock and she's a boat, and it's like, I'm gonna set sail, venture out, but I'm always going to come back to you. I can always promise you that, So it's interesting how this case ended up being handled, because like, everything does not initially look good for him, especially when things come up later on to be like, hey, turns out they had this complicated relationship in the sense of Ava and him would have other people. It's like, when we're together, but when we're apart, we lived in different places. So I lived in the city and stuff like that. So it's like, hey, what we do, like other people and stuff like that. So it starts throwing out like, hey, maybe there are other people in their lives. It kind of points to, hey, Chris, her driver/slash bodyguard, potentially being a person on Ava's side of things. But they tailored the jury, and I thought was kind of such an interesting thing of like, oh yeah, people seeing is believing. Like, the fact is, there's blood everywhere. Sure, there's a knife, but there's no actual body, so Ava might actually still be alive. I love that basically one of the jurors they picked was a lady, and she's like, oh, she seems happy. She's a newlywed to a certain extent, married 9 months, and then it's like, oh yeah, actually she's been married. This is her third time. Oh, and one of her exes, she bombarded his business on his Yelp reviews with like terrible reviews until his business got closed down. I'm like, jeez, that was like, yeah, got to get her out of here. And then there's that other lady who was just kind of like, oh, I'm a free spirit and everything like that. But it was like, oh, she's the one. She seems awesome. Now, please don't tell me she's a serial killer and has got a whole bunch of bodies buried underneath the house. And it's like, no, she seems like she's legit in that regard. So I thought that was kind of nice when they pulled the jury together like that. So, but I also like how this whole thing went down. Like, because I've always heard the term sequestered, but I don't think I ever understood what it meant. Like, I think I've read like one book, because I've read like one crime drama in my life. The fact is, like, what that really means when it comes to a jury and stuff like that. But kind of this episode kind of broke it down like that, because like, it was such a, like, it's like Benny and the team were trying so hard to fight there being a sequestered jury, and I was like, what's that about? Like, why is that such a big deal? It's like, well, because that means they're going to be cut off from their families. That means they're going to be stuck having to live in one specific spot. They can't really do anything until the trial is over, and they're going to blame you. Like, they're going to need to blame someone. It's like, well, this is all because of you, because we're literally here because of your trial and everything. And especially because they break it down later on, because even Taylor asked the question like, was it really that bad? I mean, you get put up in a hotel that gets paid for. It's almost kind of like a little vacation away. It's kind of like what she was kind of getting at. But then they bring up the point of like, well, it's not really that great, because they don't want you influenced by anything in the sequestered jury situation. That means they take away your phone, your computer, your TV. You can, well, in the sense of you can only watch certain things, and I guess it's movies, but it has to be like okayed, like stuff that has to be okayed, that I think they also have to watch as a group. I think was kind of what the mentality was. They can only eat from like 3 specific places. And even Danny's like, wait, that sounds exactly like us. And he's like, yes, but we're not around each other 24/7. They have to literally be around each other 24/7, only having each other to talk to. So that's, it's a little, it's confining. It's the fact of the matter is that it just, and eventually, that was the whole point of trying to speed everything up, because every time it's like, objection, we've been through this before, let's just hurry up through this. And it kind of made the jury go, hey, Benny's on our side, essentially, because the whole point was to speed it up, because the ADA was going to drag things out so the case would go slow, that by the time the defense's turn came around, like, the jury would be like, ugh, I just want to go home, shut up already type of mentality. I think it's just human nature of just kind of like, no matter what the circumstances is, whether they realize it or not, their frustrations would, I mean, that's kind of like the whole aspect of the show, like the human nature part plays that's why they kind of play this jury selection that they do. So it's just so interesting to find out. Holy crap! Like that everything kind of God, I got kind of lost in my own thoughts right there. Sorry. The thought that would be, you know, an issue is just, it's kind of interesting to me on that front of just like the jury getting annoyed of like, ugh, you know, because even Benny was like, yeah, we don't even know these people's extenuating circumstances when they were trying to break it up earlier. But then also like, I mean, it eventually happens later on because when Ava's body actually shows up, they have to wait even more. So the trial gets put off like another 2 days so the medical examiner can examine Ava's body and everything. And it's like, that just adds more frustration and just kind of like, ugh. Because the fact of the matter is, it doesn't come up anymore. I completely forgot about that. It wasn't even until this episode I just thought about that. Remember that mock jury aspect of it? That doesn't even happen anymore, does it? That, I guess because their systems have kind of upgraded stuff like that. I guess because I just thought about that. I don't remember if that ever came up in season 2 at all. I'm just sitting here thinking about it. I don't remember. Like, they have not done the mock jury thing in a very long time. Not unless it's something they still do. We just don't get to see it. But like anytime they're, I guess that's one aspect of tact they pulled away from. Like, I always thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to kind of get like a mock jury, but I didn't even think about that. I was like, right, because it's been such a long time since they brought that up. But nevertheless, because I was thinking like the sequestered jury was going to make that hard of like, oh, maybe. No, because what I'm thinking of, it was a situation of like, you don't get to know who the jury is ahead of time, so they wouldn't be able to, because that had come up in the past, like get their mock jury set up to mirror the real jury. Like I'm going on a tangent, but that's what, for whatever reason in my head I was thinking like that, but like no, that's a different thing altogether. It's not the same thing as a sequestered jury. But nevertheless, it's actually kind of interesting because you know, Benny is bringing up the case of being like, hey, the fact is there's all this blood here and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you believe she was stabbed this many times, but you're not certain. The fact of the matter is you're not even certain that my client Nathan actually did this. And so even at the end of it, Nathan was like, you don't actually, you and your, you know, and Benny don't actually believe what you said, that maybe I didn't do this. Because it's interesting because Bull, to a certain extent, kind of held Nathan to a higher extent because it's like, hey, I haven't hung around you and Ava a lot, but it's like, hey, you two look like you're happy and you made it. Like, you know, things weren't working between Bull and his marriage, obviously. And so for him, it's like, he looked to them as being like, oh, they're a great example of like, hey, they made it. So they're the kind of it couple. But, you know, later on, Nate's like, there's no it. They're just like people just trying to, you know, live their life and do their thing in a sense of like, there is no like perfect couple who has it all worked out. Like every marriage has their issues and stuff like that, you know, because once again, you know, I think maybe that's why Bull kind of thought like, oh, maybe that's why things between him and Isabel didn't work out. Isabella, I always keep doing that. Too many Isabels and Isabellas around to kind of do that, just other shows and stuff like that. Nevertheless. So I'm curious, like, is that, you know, maybe on some level that's always been a subconscious reason why he's kind of always, I'm sure it's just him and, you know, Benny's sister's relationship has always just kind of been that thing of like, you know, holding up, like it always, you know, as we saw last episode, it kind of has its grips on him no matter what the circumstances. But I think maybe on some level, Nate's relationship with Ava kind of prompted him to kind of, no, keep a little more hope alive and stuff like that, you know? Or maybe it made him think like, oh, maybe something's wrong with me. The fact is I wasn't able to make my marriage work because look at Ava and Nate, but even they had their complications. Because it ends up turning out like, it seemed like they had an open relationship and stuff like that, but it was more so like Nate ended up cheating first, and then Ava eventually found shoulders of her own to cry on. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we had this arrangement and everything like that. If it was, you know, because it made me kind of go, maybe that arrangement didn't really happen, but it's like, no, it did, but it was an after effect. It's kind of like after they'd already both kind of cheated. Mainly it started because of him. It's actually kind of interesting. He ended up admitting it. He was like, the reason why is because for such a long time, Ava was just his. But the moment her first book blew up, it's like she became the world's. And, you know, he'd kind of gotten a little envious of her success. He's successful in his own right, but it's because he has to share her with the other world. And she wasn't just his alone anymore. So I guess he wanted, on some level, he found a shoulder to cry on, someone to kind of be his own. And then he did it again and again and again until she found her own shoulder to cry on. So for him, it's like a lover potentially killed her. Because the moment he was like, Bull, I did it. And I was like, wait, what? Even Bull's looking at him like, wait, what did you just say? I was like, oh, crap, you admitted you did? Oh, no. It's the fact is that he blamed himself because it's like, if I had never cheated, the potential lover that killed her wouldn't have done this. I'm the one that caused all this problem, you know, all these problems. So But even Bull eventually had started to think even that Nate did it, even ask him, like, did you do it? And it's like, the fact is, like, you know me, or, you know, yet you would still ask that question. And Bull kind of regrets it later on that he even doubted. But it's interesting because Bull was wallowing, you know, in his sorrows, and Marissa's like, no, it's okay. But for him, it's like, the fact is that he doubts Nathan, even going as far as asking him, you know, because for him, it's like, I failed him. This is my friend. He might potentially go away to jail because they ended up finding his glasses. Like, you know, he buys a whole bunch of pair of reading glasses. They ended up finding it in the woods not too far from Ava's body and stuff like that. So it kind of because especially too, because with that and the body, they had built this entire jury to be like seeing is believing. And now they have the body and all this evidence kind of being used. And it's so interesting because now it's like, the defense they had built up before was literally going to be the reason they lost in this case. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But then, you know, Bull, I guess because, you know, in his mind, like, because because for him, it's like, I failed Nate. And on top of that, what makes it worse is because I was like, oh, I talked about earlier how he failed me because of the whole relationship thing. Like I said, Bull kind of held him to some high standard because of him and Ava's relationship. And, you know, Bull's kind of wallowing and stuff like that until Taylor and Danny come in and it's like, hey, Clara, the assistant, like she was supposed to get her book read, given to a publisher. She gave it to Ava to give to a publisher, but then Ava's talking to a publisher text-wise to be like, yeah, the manuscript sucks. I'm not going to send it to you. I'm just going to say I did, but, you know, let her down gently type of situation. Clara most likely saw that, and that's what caused everything. And then, like, Marissa's like, were you about to say something? And Bull's like, did I even say come in? Just like, how can a guy just wallow in his sorrows without, you know, his employees coming in and giving him a little hope? You know, it's almost like it's okay to just kind of like enjoy the, like, you know, wallow in the sadness every once in a while. Essentially what Bull will say, I thought was kind of interesting. But luckily, in the end, that is what this all turned out to be, that it was Clara. It was, you know, and Benny, with that one-liner at the end of, like, that's the problem with, you know, crimes of passion. Someone always forgets to shovel. I'm like, shut up! That sounds like almost like something you'd hear in a noir film or something like that. Like a PI saying that as a case gets closed or something. That, I don't know, that's what that reminded me of. And I'm like, here you go with that one liner, and it's like, boom! I don't know why. I don't know, I really like that. But I love, you know, it's like, you know, so did you buy the shovel and stuff like that? And she wasn't answering. The judge was like, you're going to answer. But then, like, Benny's like, no, it's okay. You know, the FBI is searching your place right now. You know, we'll find the evidence we need. So you don't have to worry about it. And kind of walks away. I'm like, that's pretty impressive. I love, once again, it's like when Benny does his thing, he does his thing, dude. It's so good. Because I'd also missed that point of evidence, too. Because Chunka was like, oh, yeah, earlier, he was like, you know, why don't we just kind of put that, like, crosshairs on Chris, like him potentially being a lover, the fact he has a short temper. But the fact is, whoever did that to Ava was a little weaker, because Chris would have been able to easily have, you know, disposed of her body, but her body was a little banged up because whoever it wasn't strong enough to really do it. So Chris couldn't have been him. Plus, the killer was left-handed. Chris is right-handed. I think that was it was either that or the other way around. But it's just like he didn't use the right hand. Right. Nevertheless, I'm confused the hell out of myself saying that. You get what I'm trying to say. So, that was kind of another. Well, and also the security cameras and stuff like that were kind of a nail against Clara as well. So, like I said, in the end, everything kind of worked out. But it turns out, you know, they had their faults. Any relationship does. But Nate loved his wife. And like I said, Bull apologizes and everything. And then it turned, because, you know, Nate just wanted to know that he hoped Ava knew that he loved her, and she loved him too, because she dedicated her book to him. And just, it was kind of sweet. The whole dock and boat analogy, I thought was kind of sweet. So it's a little, you know, sad that things kind of played out that way, but, you know, at least there was justice, you know, seen. So, like I said, very interesting episode with just like the case and just how everything kind of broke down like that. So I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good